Now that America has crossed an average of $4 a gallon at the pump, this is already bleeding into every single sector of the economy, exactly the way this channel warned it would when we first started covering what was happening with oil prices. Because oil prices have absolutely skyrocketed. And unlike most other types of inflation, this one translates into higher prices for everything almost immediately. It does not take months. It takes weeks. Right now, fast food sales are absolutely crashing. And nobody should be surprised, because fast food was already hurting before gas prices started doing what they are doing. Restaurant sales have fallen every single week since the beginning of the war. And at the exact same time, gas prices jumped over 30% in just a matter of weeks. Here is something you have to understand going into all of this. The restaurant industry was already in serious trouble before the war. Over the past couple of years, menu prices climbed at least 30% compared to what they were in 2019. According to a study by Finance Buzz, the average price of fast food items went up somewhere between 39% and 100% between 2014 and 2024. That pace outran the general inflation rate of 31% during that same window. So a typical fast food meal today is running $12 to $18 per person. You know what else costs $12 to $18 per person? A casual sit-down diner. A place with actual table service, a real plate, and a meal that was not assembled under a heat lamp. The whole argument for choosing a burger chain over a real restaurant, that it was cheaper, is functionally gone for a massive portion of the population right now. These restaurants were already having a brutal time getting customers through the door before any of this started. Because going out to eat is discretionary spending. More people have been learning to cook at home, trying to stretch their grocery budget as far as it can go. And going into 2026, Bank of America reported that foot traffic at quick-service restaurants like McDonald's was already declining while casual dining saw growth. Because at current pricing, consumers started seeing casual dining as a better deal. They were getting higher quality food for roughly the same price. That is a reversal nobody predicted. McDonald's has been in the spotlight when it comes to fast food sales on the decline, especially because McDonald's used to be the cheap option. That was the whole identity. Then people started getting outraged when Big Macs showed up at certain locations for $15. Then came the $5 meal deal. It did not really fix anything. But McDonald's had been slowly recovering. Until now, with gas prices going through the roof. And the numbers that just came out are not just bad. They are the worst McDonald's has reported since the COVID pandemic shut the entire country down. U.S. comparable sales dropped 3.6%. Revenue fell 3% to $5.95 billion. Net income dropped 3% to $1.86 billion. The CEO said on the earnings call that consumers are grappling with uncertainty, that traffic was down more than anticipated, and that those trends had continued into April. And speaking of the CEO, Chris Kempczinski, you might have seen what happened with him online recently. He posted a video to his Instagram promoting the chain's new Big Arch Burger. He held it up, described it with very corporate enthusiasm, and took the most cautious, delicate little bite you have ever seen in your life. The clip went viral instantly. People could not stop mocking him. Competitors piled on. The Burger King CEO filmed himself taking an enormous aggressive bite of a Whopper in direct response. A month later, Kempczinski sat down with the Wall Street Journal to address everything. In that interview, he bit into a chicken nugget with the exact same minimal enthusiasm. A second round of mockery followed. He told the reporter he blamed his mother because she always taught him not to talk with his mouth full. Now, since late February, gas prices went from $2.98 a gallon to $3.90 per gallon. That is a 32% increase in about a month. One of the fastest fuel price spikes since Hurricane Katrina. And the people getting hit hardest by that spike are the exact core customer of fast food. People who spend the most time in their cars are also the people who hit drive-thrus the most. And if your gas bill jumps by $100, $150, or $250 per month, that money comes out of the convenience spending first. The drive-thru is the first thing to go when a budget takes a sudden hit. Here is what makes this situation particularly brutal for these restaurants. They are getting squeezed from both ends simultaneously. Not only are customers pulling back, but their supply costs are rising at the exact same time. Let me give you a real example. There is a Greek restaurant I go to regularly. Last year, the Euro sandwich with a side of fries was $12. It had been $12 for as long as I could remember. At the beginning of this year, they raised it to $15. I went back recently and they told me the $15 is now the lunch price only. That same meal costs $19 at dinner time. That is a 37% increase in just a few months at one restaurant. Imagine how many restaurants across this country are making the same calculation right now just to stay open. The cost for these businesses is rising extremely fast. Everything that gets delivered to a restaurant travels on a truck burning diesel. And diesel costs are through the roof. Average food costs at restaurants are now more than 35% above pre-pandemic levels. More than 9 in 10 operators say food, labor, insurance, and inflation are significant ongoing challenges. 68% reported that tariffs drove higher costs last year. And even after some tariffs were lifted, restaurants had already absorbed the increases. No relief came. The costs just stayed elevated. So what is showing up in the stock prices? McDonald's stock dropped 7% within a single month. Starbucks dropped 7%. Wendy's fell 10%. Chipotle got hit hardest, down 15%. Wendy's reported same-store sales fell 2.1%, the first decline since the second quarter of 2020. Now imagine if this war drags on through the end of the year. You know, they keep saying it is going to be over in a couple of weeks. 2 weeks. It reminds me of that movie The Money Pit, where Tom Hanks asks the contractors how long the renovation is going to take and the answer is always the same. How long will this take? 2 weeks. When will you be done? 2 weeks. Any idea on a completion date? 2 weeks. 2 weeks turns into 2 years every time. And that is probably what we are looking at here. I am not making a prediction on how long this lasts. I am just saying it has already been more than 2 weeks. Here is something worth understanding. Fast food historically was one of the most recession-resistant parts of the entire consumer economy. When people struggled, they did not immediately stop eating out. They traded down. They went cheaper. McDonald's and Wendy's and Taco Bell tended to hold up better during downturns because people would stop going to Olive Garden before they stopped going to McDonald's. That was the whole theory. But now that fast food is not cheap anymore, that buffer is gone. Household budgets are being squeezed by higher housing costs, higher insurance costs, rising debt payments, and now gas on top of all of it. All of these things stack on each other and compound at the same time. And when there is nothing left in the budget for discretionary spending, the drive-thru is the first line item to get cut. I have been saying this economy has been in recession for years now. And I do not think it is going to be much longer before even the official data supports it. Now let us talk specifically about McDonald's and the delivery fee situation, because that is where a lot of the customer rage lives right now. A basic McDonald's order can easily hit $20 or more once you add delivery fees. Here is how this actually looks. You pay a delivery fee. You pay a service fee that can run as high as 15% of the order total depending on your location. The menu prices on the app are already marked up higher than in-store prices. And if your order is too small, you get charged a small order fee anywhere from $2 to $3.50. Then there is the tip. Real-life examples of what this looks like, an $8.99 order ends up costing over $20. A $5.29 order becomes $12.74 after everything gets added. One order had $8 in fees alone. Customers are reporting that roughly 1/3 of their total bill is fees. Not food. Fees. On a product that was supposed to be the cheapest meal available. The thing that is making people the most furious right now is the small order fee. The whole point of fast food delivery is cheap convenience. That is the entire value proposition. But now you get penalized for ordering too little food. So customers end up ordering more than they wanted to avoid the fee, which drives up the base cost, which then drives up every percentage-based fee on top of it. And the more you spend, the more every fee climbs. You cannot win. McDonald's started charging this through their own app back in 2022. And now customers are saying the prices on the McDonald's app are already higher than in-store prices before any of the fees even start. Then the fees stack on top of the inflated prices. Convenience has always cost something extra. Nobody is arguing that. But right now these companies are charging more than they ever have at the exact moment when the customer has the least money to absorb it. And look, if you want McDonald's, go pick it up yourself. Or honestly, do not eat it at all. Your body is going to thank you for it in 20 years. A lot of people are finally starting to see it that way. Not because of some health epiphany. Because the ripoff has become too obvious to ignore. One more thing on this. Those $3 and $5 value deals McDonald's promotes. They do not apply to delivery. In store only. If you want the cheap price, you have to go there yourself. If you want the convenience, you pay full price plus all the fees. You know, whoever would have thought, anyone old enough watching this, that fast food would become a luxury item. When I was growing up, fast food was the absolute bottom rung of what you could spend on food. You only went there if you were in a hurry or trying to spend as little as possible. Now people have to budget for it. And on top of that, the quality has gotten worse at the same time the price has gone up. You are paying more for less. Let that sit for a second. Now let us talk about how serious the oil situation actually is, because a lot of people are badly underestimating the scale of what is happening here. Between the US, Japan, and Germany, around 400 million barrels of strategic reserves are planned to be released. And you know what 400 million barrels actually covers? About 20 days of global fuel demand. Not even 3 weeks. Every single day this conflict continues, the situation amplifies. And I think the stock market could be seriously underpricing how bad this gets. Because this supply disruption is already larger than the 1970s oil embargo. The one that caused a decade of economic pain in the United States. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz removes roughly 20% of global oil supply from the market. The 1970s embargo only pulled about 7%. We are looking at something nearly 3 times worse by that comparison alone. The strategic reserve releases are a patch. A delay. When the patch runs out, the underlying problem is still there. And that is exactly why $200 per barrel oil is not a crazy scenario if this drags on. Look at what a 32% spike in 1 month has already done to consumer behavior. Now picture that doubling. The other thing this is doing is dramatically increasing the risk of stagflation. That is where economic growth stalls while inflation stays elevated or keeps climbing. And stagflation is the nightmare scenario for the Federal Reserve because there is no good option to respond to it. If they raise interest rates to fight inflation, borrowing costs go up, spending contracts, the job market weakens, and a slow economy gets slower. If they cut rates to stimulate growth, inflation accelerates. Because higher oil feeds directly into higher prices for everything that gets manufactured, shipped, packaged, or grown. There is no lever the Fed can pull that does not make one of these two problems worse. And we were already in a very low growth environment before any of this started. In fact, some of the poorer countries around the world are already showing us exactly what happens when fuel costs spiral without any buffer to absorb them. In Sri Lanka, they already went to a 4-day work week. The government there is encouraging people to work from home and cut energy usage. Universities are shutting down in some countries. It is starting to look like the COVID lockdowns again, except this time there is no mandate. It is just economic reality. People do not have the resources to keep participating in normal life at current fuel costs. Places like the Philippines and Indonesia have no strategic reserves. They rely on fuel subsidies and their stock markets are already down substantially. These are not isolated cases. They are previews. They are showing the rest of the world what happens when the bill comes due and there is no money to pay it. You know, this is what happens when you consistently borrow more than you bring in, year after year, and then something like this happens. People's wages have not kept up with inflation for a long time. And the gas price spike is probably the final nail in the coffin for anyone still arguing the consumer economy is healthy. Because higher prices mean less spending. Less spending means fewer jobs. Fewer jobs means even less spending. That cycle, once it picks up momentum, is very hard to stop. And we have not even seen the wealth effect fully unwind yet. The stock market has been propping up consumer confidence for years. Once it really gets hit, if it goes down 20% or 30% or more, the people who have been feeling financially comfortable because of their portfolio are going to close their wallets fast. We are already seeing higher-income households shift toward Walmart and dollar stores for everyday shopping. Imagine what that looks like when people no longer feel rich. People always ask, okay, you told us everything that is wrong, what are we actually supposed to do about it? Here is the honest answer. There is nothing any individual person can do about the overall direction of where things are headed. But what you can control is how you position yourself within it. The first thing is building and protecting an emergency fund. At minimum 6 months of living expenses. Preferably a full year given how unpredictable the job market is right now. Not invested. Not locked in an account you cannot access quickly. Liquid savings that you can get to immediately if something goes wrong with your income. The second thing is cutting discretionary spending with actual discipline. Fast food, delivery apps, subscriptions, convenience purchases. Every dollar you hold onto right now is insurance against something going wrong. The third is finding ways to increase income that do not depend entirely on one employer. The job market is not reliable right now. Companies are cutting staff and running lean specifically because they are preparing for conditions to get worse. They are protecting their margins now so they have room when things get harder. You need to be doing the same at the household level. And here is the part people do not want to hear. Even if this conflict ends in 2 weeks, like we keep being told it will, the damage is already done. Gas prices spiked. Supply chains got disrupted. Restaurants printed new menus. Businesses restructured around higher input costs. None of that reverses overnight. Prices go up fast, guys. They come down slowly if they come down at all. Once a business has absorbed a higher cost structure, they do not voluntarily lower prices without a guarantee those costs are not going back up next month. Be prepared as if these conditions are the new floor. Not a temporary ceiling. Do what you can. Build the buffer. Cut what is not essential. Find the extra income. And hope you never actually need it. That is the whole playbook right now. Stay subscribed to Crisis Watch. We track what is actually happening in real time, not the official narrative, not the optimistic projections. The real picture. Check out the next video on your screen right now and I will see you in the next one.